Mayuresh Joshi, fund manager at Angel Broking, joins us right now on the show. Mayuresh, good afternoon. Thanks so much for joining in. Since you're on the topic of soft commodities, Mayuresh, let me start off with that. Then we move on to some of the bigger names as well. But this whole basket, tea, sugar, etc., is, a lot of people would be skeptical simply because we've seen some really dark days for them. Do you think there is an investment case in any of these sectors, and which stocks would you choose if so?
Afternoon, Neeraj. I think one really needs to understand specifically in terms of soft commodities how the demand-supply dynamics are playing out. And being a commoditized play, realizations become paramount for all these companies. Having said that, probably I think the cycle that you're probably looking even on the sugar side, the expectations again are with the kind of weather distortions that we've seen in Brazil, there is expectations of supply disruption happening from that side. Even on the Indian context, you're probably looking at lesser production numbers probably come through. And again, the sugar cycle moves in a 2-year on-off cycle. So if one really expects the on cycle, which is a positive cycle for the sugar industry to start from the coming crushing season, the prices have already moved up substantially. So any substantial movement in terms of the end realization prices for sugar is definitely going to affect their balance sheets. But a lot of these balance sheets, whether it's tea, whether it's sugar, are still in a very, very bad shape. So I think for a sustainable recovery to happen, there has to be a sustainable improvement in realizations. If that probably happens over the next couple of years through their own cycle, we might probably expect the return ratios and the operating cash flows to improve. Again, I think largely a lot of these stocks in terms of their price movement have moved substantially in expectations of all these things happening through. And yes, the prices have moved specifically for sugar, but clearly I think the expectations again are getting laid out. The tea prices, when the tea season officially begins in May, there might be some amount of spurt happening on that count, which can again have a positive impact in terms of how the top line for these companies grow. So clearly I think I'll wait for declines, specifically when it comes to a few of the sugar stocks, something like a Balrampur, something like an Andhra Sugar. But clearly I think you have to wait for declines. I think the price movement has been quite substantial.
Okay, Navneet Daga of IIFL India Flying also joins in on the show. And Navneet, straight away when I look at the Nifty 100 or the Nifty losers, two names that stand out for me are Bharti Airtel and TCS. And these are heavyweights on the index that is having that bit of a pressure as well. I mean, 9% weightage for a TCS is no mean feat. That is down 3%. Bharti is down 4%. And they are not the top OI build-up counters in the new series the way I've seen it. So what's happening here? What kind of positions would you take on these two?
Well, particularly on the IT basket, the TCS, we have seen the lack of rollovers, and which was materially putting on the pressure now on this counters. As well as on the INFI also, we have not seen that materially the higher amount of rollovers carry for the long position, which was being determined by the price action. It was not carry forward in the OI data. So we will be a bit cautious on these particular names, TCS as well as on the INFI. Both we are looking some kind of a putting more drag on the index. And similarly, it's looking likely on the Bharti or the telecom space. Again, the rollovers or quantums were not that encouraging. So at this point of time, Bharti is looking likely somewhere near to 320, 322 levels as possible on the Bharti on the downside.
Okay, these stocks are looking slightly wobbly, particularly TCS. Mayuresh, this is the first earnings season in the last 4 or 5 or 6 that I haven't seen a large cap IT name come out and give a warning. A mid cap IT name may have done that, but none of the large 4 have come out and said that, hey, this quarter because of currency or otherwise there will be a problem. But there's a bit of a pressure. However, most people believe with Accenture's guidance coming in that the year ahead should be okay. What are your thoughts at Angel on the large cap IT space? What's the favorite? What's the pecking order?
Now again, Neeraj, I think we remain extremely optimistic when it comes to the top tier IT names. And the logic here is very, very clear. I think individually, if you look at any of these stocks within the pack, the client mining activities have improved multifold over the last few quarters. Clearly, I think in terms of even the utilization levels of employees, they've shown increased traction, along with the fact that a lot of these attrition levels have become very, very manageable over the past few quarters. Again, I think Q4 largely dependent on how the consumer discretionary spends will be decided. But a lot of management commentary at the end of last quarter was pointing out to the fact and alluding again clearly that a lot of these aspects related to expenditure or spending on the discretionary front should remain quite stable. Having said that, probably even in terms of constant currency growth for the top tier names, for example, Infosys, I think our own take is a 12.5% dollar revenue growth probably happening over the next couple of years. You're probably looking at tailwinds in terms of utilization levels picking up. You're probably looking at EBIT margins between 25-26%. Take the case of HCL Tech. I think the engineering services, which accounts for around 18-19%, is expected to grow at a much faster clip. Having said that, I think the margins that the engineering segment commands is much greater than what the other traditional businesses in the IT space cover. So clearly, if that shows a significant amount of traction, along with the transformational deals that the company has been winning quarter after quarter, you're probably expected to have 13% traction both in dollar and rupee terms. So clearly, I think the top tier IT names is something that we'll still be extremely optimistic about over the next 2 to 3 years. Our own take is that the constant currency growth should be quite reasonable. The hedging policy that these companies follow would entail some amount of risk in terms of how the currency would pan out in terms of the EBIT margins getting hit. But again, I think largely that's getting factored in when the numbers start coming around.
Since you're on that subject,
is something we'll continue to like.
Right. Since you're on that subject, and I just want to kind of update our viewers. The HCL Geometric share swap deal. I mean, it's not confirmed as of now. The board meet is at about 5 p.m. and all that we've heard from the Geometric management is that they are likely to discuss some strategic options at the 5 p.m. board meet. But this is a Niti Now exclusive. Yatin Mota has been on top of the story, and he's been talking about how there could be an acquisition in the works where HCL Tech will acquire Geometric for a share swap for 43 shares held in Geometric, 10 shares in HCL Tech would be issued. Now, how are you looking at the contours of this deal? As we understand it for now, there's no confirmation that's come in from the management, but sources are indicating that the deal may be announced today at the board meet. What would it do for Geometric and HCL Tech as a combine?
So Kabir, again, if you look at the numbers that Geometric, if you look at the numbers that Geometric has been posting, I think it has been quite reasonable, and considering the kind of catering that it does to its niche services, I think there has been talks about. So I think I'll not be speculating in terms of what valuation the company should be deriving at this point of time, but the top line growth has been quite consistent for the company, and it has not been growing as the other mid-cap IT companies probably have been growing in terms of their niche offerings. Having said that, probably I think the niche areas of expertise that Geometry probably has, PML, engineering, I think that would sufficiently say, I think, interest companies probably who are trying to foray into these areas. So again, I think highly speculative at this point of time. But again, I think in terms of core numbers and in terms of the price moment that Geometry is probably exhibited, I think largely it has factored in on what kind of speculative news is surrounding the stock.
Okay, let's try and nail it down to top ideas though. Trading ideas at 255. CK, I'll come to you first. Your top call at this hour.
I think Jet Airways seems to be revving up again. It had dropped down into support, and today's price action is with decent amount of volumes and upside momentum. So at the current price of about 566, 567, recommend a buy. The stop is reasonably nearby at about 556 to 558. So that's a fairly tight stop on a volatile counter, and we can look for a target somewhere around 584.
Navneet, if you had to choose one stock for a trade at this hour, which one would that be?
I'll go for DLF. That's looking very strong to me. The rolls have been quite strong, and the chart breakout has happened, and it's been a lot of resilience in the falling markets as well. So it's given a very good breakout above 115 levels. So I'll go with the DLF as a long trade with a target of 130 to 132 levels on the next week, with a strict stop loss on the lower side of 114.5.
All things going for the real estate space and for DLF in particular. So you're not surprised with this call. Sahil, one stock idea at this hour.
At this hour, I think I'll go with Reliance Infra at closer to 551. I think the stock can go and touch 560, 565 in the next few hours and sessions. So that will be a buy call.
Okay, Reliance Infra is a buy call from Sahil Kapoor as well. Let's take a break on that note. We come back, get you the chart of the day, get you an update on the European markets which are not looking that strong. and of course closing strategies and dealer talk as well. Back with closing trades right here on ET now. Europe hasn't had a particularly great last 1 hour of trade. Just look at this. This is the live tick by take. About 1% off for the FTSE. The CAC and the DAX too have gone down quite considerably. And the intradays of these charts would have shown you that there was a bit of a downtick at about 215, 230. Not that they started off well, but I think post 215 or 220, they really came off, both FTSE, CAC, DAX. So ahead of that US data, I think there's a bit of a nervousness in global markets by and large, and it's showing in FTSE, CAC and DAX as well. 1.5% for CAC, DAX too, feeling a bit of pinch.
Oh yes, indeed. It was a weaker start for those markets, and that's continuing as we speak. Let's get in the chart of the day before anything else. Dr. Narayan joins us. He has been with us, so just get a quick update from him on what's he watching out for in the last half an hour of trade left as the market kind of dodges its way around 7,700. Dr. Narayan?
No, I think the smaller mid-cap stocks are in play today, and one of them which had caught our eye earlier, and we had discussed it maybe a week or so ago, that is Mukta Arts, when it had seen a pretty strong up move, nearly vertical move for about 5 to 7 sessions. Subsequent to that, that stock had got into a bit of a consolidation without really conceding much of the ground. And in today's trade, Mukta Arts seems to be back in demand and is actually up some 15-16% when I saw it last. I think the stock is just charging up and the uptrend seems to be resuming. So despite the big move of today, I would think Mukta Arts continues to remain a buy at the current price of about 68 or 69 where it was trading at when I last saw it. And I think with a stop placed slightly south of 60 rupees, we can look for an immediate target in the price range of about 85. So that's a positional or a short-term investment on Mukta Arts.
My 2 bits on Mukta Arts as well. CK, thanks for that idea, 69 or 70. And while, yes, it's been a company that's consistently been under a cloud, never really came up as an investment case at any point of time in the past. But I think this YouTube deal, the deal that they've struck with YouTube, wherein anybody who wants to create a movie or a short-term video on YouTube for public can actually make a production specifically for YouTube using the Mukta Arts facilities. And there are YouTube personnel. It's the only partner for YouTube in India. And it probably will be the only partner because YouTube only partners with probably one company in a country. Then you go to Mukta Arts Studio, use it. And I think the management, when they did an interaction with us 3 months ago, had mentioned that very soon we will not have space to get people in and use our facilities because there will be enough and more people wanting to do the production here.
Lots of demand, yeah.
So, yeah, it's a really sweet deal for Mukta Arts. It's not looked back since then. It was 50 then, 70 currently.
And there was, I think, one cavity that the intraday graph formed. But like Neeraj pointed out, I think it's telling that the stock is, from a 52-week perspective, up almost 130 points. Do you see, perhaps greater traction? I mean, if that's the kind of business model that we're looking at.
I mean, let's see if the report numbers, I think we'll get to know about in the next couple of quarters, whether they're able to show that into the promise into numbers as well. But CK's pointed it out. It's a very interesting stock on the charts, hopefully fundamentally as well. Mayuresh, do you track Mukta Arts at all?
No, unfortunately, not tracking Mukta Arts.
Okay. Never mind. But Mayuresh, let's talk about some specific ideas from your end as well. We got your reports too, and there are some specific stocks. We all talking about this heat wave that we've already started experiencing. I'm not surprised you choosing a Blue Star as one of the stocks, but why a Blue Star amongst a host of other options available? There is a Voltas, there is a Symphony. Why are you choosing a Blue Star over the others?
Again, if you look at the room air conditioning market in India, generally I think highly underpenetrated, even if I do a simple comparison check with China. So that's point number one. Point number two, within the individual segment itself, the unitary cooling solutions, which is the room AC segment, has gained traction for the company over the past few quarters and years. So now it accounts for almost 40 to 45% of the overall top line, and that is expected to improve. Now, with raw material costs going down and increased traction even on the B2B front, on the industrial activity side, we are probably expected to see margins expand for Blue Star over the next few quarters. Again, with the summer season coming round, and as you rightly pointed out, with the heat wave that is probably existing at this point of time, our own take is that volume should increase substantially for Blue Star over the next few quarters. And again, I think in terms of bottom line growth, it should trickle down quite nicely. So clearly, I think even the influx of cash from Blue Star Infotech is going to aid the company's cash flows in a substantial manner. So I think Blue Star is something that I've liked for some length of time, even in the past. I continue liking that over the next 12 to 18 months.
Right, and you also are looking at Radico Khaitan at this point in time, Mayuresh?
Again, largely yes. If you look at the core business model that the company is into, it has seen a substantial amount of volume growth, specifically on its IMFL segment, and that is expected to grow in a big way. Again, I think the key raw material cost, ENA, has shown decline, and it's expected to remain subdued at least for the next few quarters. Now, the old expectations of price hikes coming through from individual state governments, if that probably takes place over the next few quarters, you might have substantial price increases happening for Radico Khaitan, which is going to abet its top line in a substantial manner. And again, in terms of core valuations, if I do a simple check between what it's done in United Spirits, and United Spirits has corrected significantly, yet there is a premium available to United Spirits. And our own take is, whatever controversy surrounding United Spirits at this point of time, the management will focus more on volumes and rather than profitability, specifically in USL's case. So again, I think Radico Khaitan would gain market share with raw material cost remaining subdued. The margins probably should expand. It should reduce its debt gradually over the next few quarters, and that should probably aid its bottom line as well. So yes, I think remain optimistic on Radico Khaitan over the medium to long term as well.
Okay, and you also have a Jagran Prakashan, Mayuresh. Interesting. What is it? The 10-15% ad revenue growth that is making you invest in a play like Jagran?
Well, yes, I've been optimistic on Jagran over a longer period of time as well. And yes, I think we do expect a 15-16% ad revenue growth coming through. And even on the radio business top line, EBITDA and bottom line have held up pretty well. So I think if I take into discount the market leadership position that ENIL has got, I think it's got substantial inroads that still can be made, that can abet its performance, and the overall consolidated performance should improve substantially as well. Our own take is that the operating margin should hold up pretty nicely for Jagran Prakashan, anywhere between the 26 to 28% range. And even if you look at the bottom line growth, our expectations are a 20% bottom line growth over the next couple of years, with input costs, specifically pulp prices, remaining exceedingly low and expected to remain that way at least for the next few months. The margin should remain stable, as I mentioned earlier. And clearly, I think if you're looking at the subscription revenue growth that the company really expects from the Hindi reading belt, it has a dominant position in a few of the Hindi reading states. So Jagran is something that I remain extremely buoyant about. If they are able to deliver as the management is promising, specifically in terms of how their ad revenues will grow, my own take is that Jagran's stock price can see much higher levels, even from the current levels that we're probably looking at.
Okay, by the way, just amongst other names, IVRCL, it's a penny stock but has shrunk further in trade, I think. Just bring up the intraday and you will see what I'm talking about. This is, of course, the 52-week chart, but the intraday today will show you what I'm talking about. I think there is a further downtick that has happened in IVRCL. So that is 1 week stock, 12.5% down now. Among stocks that have done well, I think G Shipping should come up on your screen. Good going for that stock as well. G Shipping should come up. The intraday, the stock has done very well, 8.5% higher. By the way, before I go to a chartist on G Shipping, some news bits from agencies. The Deputy Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia says that they will freeze all output only if Iran joins in. And from the looks of it, or from the last that I heard, I don't see a fair possibility of Iran joining in. It's after ages that they've started getting access to the world markets. So now that I understand a lot of Middle East geopolitical to and fro, but I think this would mean that the freeze on oil output is unlikely to be anytime soon, and that technically or sentimentally should not be good news for a crude bull, if that is any updates there.
Yeah, basically putting one basic plus another basic together. That's what the story looks like. So it's not like you're going to see additional supply really coming into the market. Actually, you're not seeing a supply cut really, essentially bringing about some support to the prices on the upside. So around 40 is where largely the market expects prices to average around. What does that mean for oil and marketing companies and oil as well as exploration companies? Mayuresh, come to you and your own sense on that entire space because, the situation on the supply side with global oil prices is not going to change in a hurry. So what are the assumptions that work in for oil marketing companies and some of the gas explorers too?
Again, I think upstream, downstream, Tanveer, I think have to be looked at in a different sphere. So specifically in terms of the upstream companies, I think what kind of capex they entail going forward is going to take a toll because most of these upstream companies have become a direct play on oil. So the way the oil prices move, I think the fortunes of these companies are going to move accordingly. Having said that, probably even if you look at the expectations that ONGC have in terms of crude oil production for FY16, around 26.5 MMT, the gas production around 25.1, the reduction in gas prices over the next 6 months is going to have a toll in terms of taking a hit on their bottom line. And again, the ad valorem says that has probably come through. Is going to have a sentimental and a financial impact as well on these stocks. So upstream companies, in my opinion, are clearly going to underperform the markets at least over the medium term. For the downstream, clearly, I think the fall in oil prices, or if the oil prices remain in range, there might be some amount of adjustments probably happening in terms of inventory gains, losses, either ways in how the oil price movement happens in an interim time period of a quarter. But clearly, if you go beyond that, our own take is that a substantial chunk OMCs have already recorded in terms of working capital gains, in terms of debt reduction.
Okay, by the way, the markets are now recovered really well, just about 86 points down for the Sensex. The CNX small cap index is up 2%. So the going seems to be good for the time being. Firmly above 7,700, 7,710 for the Nifty. And the small caps are the ones. The BSE small cap up 1%, the CNX small cap up 2%. So the broader end of the spectrum is where the action is. A lot of mid caps and small caps active. Sahil Kapoor, one of them that has shot up a bit is GE Shipping. Any thoughts here on this stock? It's not normally spoken about as a trading stock. I think it's making some sound moves today.
I think largely the stock is, I think, in a short-term kind of a uptrend. I would want to play with the trend. I feel possibly you could purchase it today as a BTST trade as well, and I see a possibility of a 2 to 3% pop on Monday. And more than that, I would not carry it forward. So it's more or less a BTST trade from here.
CK, I think both you and Navneet Daga had real estate within your bets. I think you liked HDIL. I think Navneet has a buy call on DLF. But I think the space looks very interesting, CK. India Bulls Real Estate, HDIL, DLF, all of them have extremely good F&O activity in the first day of the new series as well. Besides the one that you've already recommended, would you like a DLF or a India Bulls as well?
I would prefer a DLF. I think, leadership status in the sector, as it were, within the stocks at least, belongs to DLF. And I do like the chart also a little better as compared to India Bull Real Estate. So I think, but then it has moved up, right? About 120 plus it has come to. The buy signal actually came in at about 110. So that's a decent move. That's a 10% move. So I'm not going to rush into buy. The reason I chose HDIL over DLF is that there was still some room for movement because HDIL had not covered that much kind of ground. So I think my pecking order would be HDIL, DLF and IB Real in such an order.
By the way, bring up But Tanveer has been speaking about the T stocks. Just bring up McLeod Russell. I think HDFC Securities has come out with a note wherein they're speaking about that McLeod Russell management buying almost 38 to 40 lakh shares. The other one is Goodrick. It's a multinational company which has also shot up in trade. Normally you speak about McLeod and the other Jayashree Tea, but look at Goodrick International, 4.5% higher. There's an HDFC Securities note speaking about a lot of good things for this stock. So do watch out for Goodrick as well. If you're indeed playing tea, HDFC Securities says that this could be a decent play as well. I don't think any of the tea or the sugar names are very active movers on the FNO side, so I'll skip that when I go to Navneet. But Navneet, I do want you to come in on the ADAG group names, Reliance Infra and a few others. Actually, all of them are active. Reliance Power was active yesterday. Reliance Infra is active today. Reliance Capital has not done too badly. Anything out of this pack that appeals to you?
Well, on the ADAG pack, my pecking order would be somewhere Reliance Infra should be on the top list on the buying side. Reliance Capital as well as Reliance Com, they are more of a catch-up trade, and normally you don't want to get into the catch-up trade at the higher end of the band. So better trade would be Reliance Infra at this point of time as well. I'll carry forward if somebody is looking to buy into it, still can get into it. We are looking at somewhere it can move towards 580 odd levels, but the Reliance Infra would be the best preferred one in this entire space.
Okay, CK, if you had to choose one PSU bank for a trade, and it's a difficult one or maybe it's an easy one because almost all of them are doing very, very well today. Union Bank could be up 6%, but PNB, BOB, etc. are also not doing too badly, 3% apiece for both of these. So I'm guessing it's across the board. Despite the market looking a bit soft, which PSU bank would you trade? We are hitting the policy in a couple of days, CK.
Well, I would still keep my bets with State Bank. See, PSU banks as a whole is kind of a recovering pack. And in a recovering pack, whenever there is some news which could be positive, the max gains will always accrue to the leader, even though the others may also follow in its wake. I think the way State Bank straddles over the rest of them, the choice is very clear. If you are playing for the policy, then State Bank should be the one.
Okay, if you're playing for the policy, State Bank should be the one, but almost all PSU banks are doing very well today. Bring up Bank of Baroda, bring up Union Bank of India, bring up PNB as well. There's a lot of traction. Bank of India is up about 3.5% as well. Canara Bank is up 4.5%. So PSU banks, by and large, seem to be doing okay. And we again revisit that point. I think you were making that point as well. With just the recoveries that are coming in for a lot of these banks on the NPA assets, we've seen what's happened with Himalayas and a few other cases as well. Sure. The adjusted book value for the first time in the last so many years could actually be higher than the notional book value right now, because a lot of these perceived NPAs could actually become receivables, and that should help the book values of these banks, and therefore
I think that's a big trigger. I don't know how much of that gets priced in and when and how much, but I think this quarter, given what managements may say about their with regards to FY17 expected recoveries and receivables on bad accounts, I think it's a very, very important trigger.
Mayuresh, how are you playing then? Which PSU bank would you choose and why as a fundamental play?
I still would like the large cap PSU banks, Neeraj. And the logic here is pretty clear. At least the larger private public sector banks are sufficiently capitalized compared to the smaller ones. Yes, the government has promised infusion to probably come through. But again, I think what quantums comes through and what time periodicities is very, very important to monitor. Secondly, I think the largest space PSU banks also have a decent CASA ratio, which gives them the leverage benefits of pushing through retail advances in a substantial manner. Again, clearly, I think the deterioration in asset quality that we are largely witnessing, and as Tanveer was mentioning, I think would largely play out in Q4, as managements have been mentioning earlier as well at the end of Q3. But again, I think if the pain does persist a little bit longer, my own take that even Q1 might be a little bit soft for these banks. Now, if the numbers show increasing trend in terms of NIMs being stable, with the kind of RBI norms being revisited in terms of revaluation reserves expected to be included in Tier 1, that probably gives them the buffer space for credit growth going forward. But clearly, I think the larger public sector banks is something that I'll still be very, very comfortable with.
It's just awesome, the move. I was looking at all the NAC stocks and sorting them for the kind of gains that they have made. It's sugar across the board, and Uttam Sugar is up 20%. Aud Sugar is up 17.5%. These stocks will come up for you. Don't know what a Kotari Sugar particularly does, but that one is up close to 13% as well. Then there is, so look at this, Aud Sugar is up 17. There is Rajshri Sugar, which is up close to 12%. Spoke about Uttam Sugar, that one is up close to 18% in trade. And then, of course, I mean, the larger names may not be up as much, but Banari Amman, Mawana Sugar, Upper Ganges, Thiru Aruran, the kind of gains that some of these names have had is quite spectacular. And, you know, I mean, I know what C.K. Narayan's view is on this. He's spoken about this umpteen number of times. Today, Sahil Kapoor mentioned about Balrampur Chini as being an idea. But just before we get in closing strategies, actually, or maybe do that, CK, first a quick view, since we haven't taken it today from you, on a sugar name, if you will, and then couple that up with your closing strategy.
See, I think the point that you were making, that all these side stocks in the sugar pack are now charging upward, probably indicates that people are kind of scrambling to get into the sector now, which is not really such a good thing, considering that most of the sugar stocks, particularly the larger names, they've all virtually doubled or tripled from their low levels. And if you look at the big names, Balrampur, EID and Dwarikesh and all this, all of them are hardly up 1% or 2%. And whereas the series of names that you reeled out at an average of about 10-15% up, I think those are very low liquidity stocks, and a small bunch of buying by some HNI circle or some, let's say, PMS would probably send it up. So I think I would get wary at this particular juncture and not really venture into sugar at these prices. As far as the closing strategy trade is concerned, I would suggest a BTST on Apollo Hospital. It was threatening to break a support trend line. A long-term support trend line seems to have recovered nicely and is also pushed up pretty well during today's trade. 1355 is where it is trading in April futures. Look to buy this. Stop loss at 1340, and we can target about 1390.95 by Monday.
Sahil, your top closing strategy?
I'll issue a buy on IDBI. If you look at the stock, there is a 14-15% OI build up, good volume and price breakout. And I think before the RBI policy, I would want to go with this stock. I expect it to move towards 78 to 80 rupees in the, possibly before the policy announcement. So a buy on IDBI Bank.
Okay. Navneet, come to you and your strategy before we close.
Well, again, on the PSU banking lot, Bank of India looks interesting to me, where the way the build-up has happened, the 7 or 8% of futures open interest gain, as well as a breakout above 100 levels, it would increase some kind of a more short covering, which can be seen in the stock. And if you look at the call structure data, the 100 strike price call options hold the maximum OI, so it's trading about that. It will invite a lot of short covering from the call writers as well. So would go for a Bank of India with a target of 106 and stop loss of 98.
Okay, Den Networks, it is, which on that news flash, they've sold, I think, 54% stake in Den Sports. Was that the news? And I think they'll get in 43 crores for that. Remember, capital intensive business needs a lot of money, and that is leading to the stock moving up 16.5%. Mayuresh, media is in focus. What about Den? A quick view here, Mayuresh. Den Networks.
I'm not covering Den, Neeraj.
They just exited their joint venture with Star about 15 days back. So, and I was just going through the details there. But, within less than 2 weeks, there's another news of an exit coming in for a consideration of 40 crores, mind you. That deal also happened for 40 crores. Okay.
And let's just shift. We have about a couple of minutes, and then we'll continue the interview post-market closing. But Hardik Debar of Delta Corp is with us. Hardik, firstly, congratulations, but explain to our viewers, what does this mean? There's an extension to the offshore casinos, extension to relocate levels, and permission to operate Royal Flotel. What does this mean?
So, Neeraj, as you will remember, there has been talks in the media that, the government of Goa has made a decision that they want the offshore casinos to go out of the Mandovi, and in between there were some rumors floating around. So I think this basically puts that speculation to rest, that there is nothing, no relocation, no shifting of the offshore casinos for the time being, at least for the next 1 year, or till the time the government comes up with an alternative plan, as the news article clearly states. With regards to the Royal Flotel, we had a third license for our company called Delta Pleasure Cruises, and we were operating the vessel called Caravella there. We had gone in for an upgradation of the vessel, and we were changing that vessel, for which once the vessel was ready, we had applied to the government, and we were awaiting the final approval of the government to start our operations. So effectively this means that now we will have 3 operating vessels in the Mandovi River in Goa, subject to being communicated officially. As you would be aware, this is a news article which has appeared in the newspapers in Goa. Official communication from the government to us as the company is yet to happen, but that should also happen soon.
When you say soon, are you expecting it? Could you kind of qualify that?
It's all out in the papers. I believe the Chief Minister himself made that statement, so it's a question of a few days here and there now.
So no losses, no gains really, but no losses because of this. No changing of offshore to onshore, and I think that's a big plus too. Just one last thing, Hardik, we're just approaching market close as well. How many vessels do you have, or how many casinos do you have in Goa right now, and would there be something that gets added in the current financial?
Yes, so two we have already under operations, Deltin Royal and Deltin Jack, and a land-based operation in Deltin Suites. The license that has been issued, or we have been communicated that it has been granted to us, will be the third offshore casino, so we will have 4 operations in Goa. So
Royal Flotel is the third one, you're saying?
That's right, which was the erstwhile Caravella boat.
All right. Great. Hardik, we'll have to leave it at that. Thanks so much for taking the time out though and joining us.
Thanks, Neeraj.
That's essentially the summary of Delta Corp's operations in Goa. No bad news, and that's the good news, quite frankly. But Tanvi was speaking about DEN, and that stock is the more active one right now.
Yeah, it's the last minute mover of the day, given this announcement of them selling out actually 55% in DEN Sports, which is taking the stock higher by nearly 19%. I want to bring up the monthly chart of DEN Networks, because in the back of the news that came out on 16th March, where they were talking about selling out of the joint venture with Star for a consideration of 40 crores, this amount is 43, less than, that's about 35% for the stock from a move that started at 76 bucks. That essentially is the story. 80 crores is what they'll get out of these 2 deals if those numbers are accurate.
Yeah, so a good move for DEN. But just before we start wrapping, CK, a quick 30-second view. The market is, extremely buoyant right now. We're ending very, very strong. Would you initiate some fresh longs on the index per se, CK?
Not really. If I want to go long, it would only be the Bank Nifty, definitely not the Nifty. I think Friday short covering towards the end of the day. I think midday shorts are all squaring up right now. So I really wouldn't get over-enthused about what's happening currently.
Okay. And that's the market for you. Start of the new series, start of the new financial year, April Fool's Day, but there's no fooling the market or the market fooling us. It's pretty much steady. 7,700 is being maintained on the index, and it's been a flat close, so to speak, within, of course, a narrow range. So the market has pretty much covered a lot of ground, and it's been a bit volatile, but still finding its comfort at 7,700. The mid-cap and the small-cap indices are more active in the session today. The small-cap index incidentally gaining about nearly 2% at that. Bank of Baroda, and keep an eye out from among the PSU banks, they've taken a higher write-off in Q3. They are talking about Q4 also seeing some traction, improvement in recovery. So perhaps this could be the outlier and the outperformer within the PSU bank space. So far, where the focus has been with SBI. ITC up 2%. ACC, of course, is higher by 2% as well. And be mindful of what's happening with the engineering majors, L&T and BHEL, both up close to about 3% together. Ambuja Cement also adding to the excitement in the cement pack with ACC. And of course, part of the rub-off could be because of the Ultratech deal. HDFC, HCL Tech, those are the names which have shown traction. To the losers, Bosch, big crackdown, 4% down for that stock. Bharti Airtel, big crackdown, 4% lower. And I just want to bring in the new movers, the new additions to the Nifty in the session today. Tata Motors DVR, a debut on the index, down about 1%. And Bharti Infratel, amongst others, also a debut on the index today. And that one will come up for you on your screens, 1% higher.
Yes, talk about the broader end of the spectrum, and I think we've done very well for the mid caps and the small caps. Den Networks is your star on the Nifty 500 by late surge. It's a happy surge and ending up almost 20%. So good going there. I think we didn't mention the JP Group stocks to our guests, but JP Infratech, Jaiprakash Associates, JP Power, all three have had a really good move today. Good going. Deleveraging process serious. I don't know how much material difference it makes to the stock, but doing well. Mukta Arts, that's one big mover in trade. 18 or 19% in the session, or 20%, 70.55. Extremely smart move. I dare say these quarter numbers could be very different from some of the others, but yep, good going for Mukta Arts. Jindal Saw has some up move on good volumes, up 7.5%. G Shipping, 6.5% off the highs of the day, but doing okay. A stock that stayed strong is Cyient. Throughout the trading day today, Cyient has had some really good moves. So good going at 453 for that one. And then, of course, NIIT, one more stock, up 5.5%. Good going. And then three baskets. Firstly, real estate. HDIL, DLF, India Bulls Real Estate, all three of them. Extremely good futures action as well on these three. So do watch out for these names. They could be having a good run. Maybe it continues on Monday. And then the soft commodities, tea and sugar. McLeod Russell, Jayashree Tea, Goodrich Tea. I just spoke about that HDFC Securities note on that stock. All the tea stocks have had a phenomenal outing today. A lot of promoter buying has been seen in some of the other stocks as well. McLeod Russell, for example. So McLeod has done well. Jayashree Tea has done exceptionally well. I think the last I saw, Jayashree was up about 10%. Harrison is up 16%. So the tea stocks are doing well. Jayashree Chemicals is a separate company, but Jayashree Tea, I think, has done well. And of course, McLeod Russell has done well. And then, let's get Jayashree Chemical out of the way. McLeod Russell and Jayashree Tea. And then the sugar names. Extremely strong move. Not so much for an EID and a Balrampur, but the smaller rung, the Rajshri Sugars, Upper Ganges, Dwarikesh, etc. are having a really good outing in trade. So on balance, not a bad day. We end above 7,700 and we'll take it with both hands. Next week is an extremely crucial week. Elections kickstart, the assembly elections. We also have the all-important credit policy on Tuesday. And of course, then the earnings kickstart as well. BHEL provisional earnings next week too. So it promises to be an eventful week, the start of an eventful month, I dare say, for our markets.
The market was listening to you very closely. Mukta Arts, Lux, I think, in circuit, 20%. Let's bring up Mukta Arts. As we were talking about their new deal with YouTube. And yep, that's the bar chart, but I think the intraday graph would give a better picture for those joining us right now. 70.55, Mukta Arts, Lux in circuit at 20%.
Yeah, good going for the stock, ending up 20%. But let's get in closing thoughts from all our experts. Navneet, before we thank you, your positioning, it's the start of the new series, but banks will likely remain volatile and active next week. How do you position yourself? What options, what futures?
Well, the start of the week is it's looking likely that we will be in a tight range until we see an RBI or the Fed event this moved out of the series, out of the context. But it's likely that the way the Bank Nifty is holding up above 16,000 levels, it's likely that some more gains are likely possible. So the possible trade on the index would be a kind of a bull call spread on the Bank Nifty. That would make a lot of sense to me.
CK, very important. Expiry, credit policy. What do you think happens the next 2 or 3 days?
Well, clearly the eyes of the market are trained on to the event of Tuesday. But the way that the build-up has happened across the whole of March and now into the next two sessions, as it were, I think almost 50 bips is getting baked into the cake, as it were. And anything short of that would now probably act as a bit of a disappointment. Maybe they'll bury some good news in the small print, but right now, sentiment is such that the market needs really big headlines, right? And if the governor is unable to provide those kind of headline news or headline events, I think the market would not wear it very well. Bank Nifty staying up is not much of a surprise because nobody wants to go out and sell the banks so close to an event. So it will continue to remain buoyant, and intraday dips on Monday would continue to remain buying opportunities. But the closer we get to the event, the more risk prone your trade becomes, and therefore only the more aggressive traders or the more professional of traders who are nimble enough to get out of the way if something remiss happens, I think they should be participating. The attention seems to be spreading into the non-index names, which is why as you enumerated, sugar and tea and real estate and so many other names which are all non-index related, they saw a lot of action. I think people are loading up on stocks which have not moved, which may be good provided the news is good. So I think Monday will be a decent session, but I don't think you will have too many firebombs going up. They'll all wait for the event on Tuesday. So Monday is another day similar to today, I would think. A stock specific day, index trading not much, but the dips in the Bank Nifty need to be bought.
Okay, Sahil, your thoughts? How are you positioning yourself for next week?
I think next week you could see some amount of uptick before the RBI steps in, but I think overall the market appears to be a little tired, and I expect a correction of about 100-130 points. That will be the point where you could enter Nifty. So strategically place your longs closer to 7600, 7630 range. I think that is a correction where you should enter Nifty. Overall, the trend appears to be quite strong. So post one correction, I think you should enter and look for targets of 1750 to 8000.
Look for targets for 7900 to 8000. That's where the call activity is centered. So pretty much corroborating the fact that the upside to the market from here is that level. And what a U-turn, right? From February lows to now where the market is talking 7,900, 8,000 again. From talking 6,800, 6,900, 6,500 and even lower.
Yep, it's been a phenomenal U-turn. But Mayuresh, very quickly, closing thoughts from you as we wrap up. What would be your favorite in terms of earnings? What would you position yourself for this earnings season?
No, largely, I think consumer durables is something that I'll be very, very watchful for. Key aspects to be noted here is how the volume growth scenario pans out, specifically in terms of some price cuts being initiated by a few consumer durable companies. That is one area that I'll be probably looking at. Banking largely factored in terms of how asset quality woes might continue. Infra/stroke construction is something that I'll be keeping a close eye on as well. Expectations again largely laid out that Q4 will be a little bit better than what Q3 has panned out in terms of both order flows coming through for the sector and some respite seeing in margins. But largely I think expecting a very soft and tepid earnings season probably to come through, and a majority of the Nifty contributors in terms of sectoral contributions are expected to probably still keep dragging the earnings down for the full year basis as well.
Gentlemen, all of you, thank you so much for joining us and giving us your thoughts and your recommendations all through the trading day. Some very interesting stock ideas as well that have been discussed. Thanks so much, all of you, for joining in. As we hit that break though, just tell you that while we showed some buoyancy towards close, I think the global markets are anything but buoyant. The intraday of FTSE, some of the others will show you. Just look at today's price movement for FTSE. It's down 1.5% now, 1.3%. And at a point of time, it was trading at levels of 6120, currently at 6094. It's not been a happy hunting ground for the global markets. I think CAC and DAX too have come off quite a bit. Nevertheless, this is what we will address on the other side of this very, very quick break. Stay tuned.